indeed. Welcome to some yin yoga. So we're gonna start with a reclining butterfly. So I am gonna just lie down on the floor, but you can build a little couch, put some props underneath you. I'm gonna roll up a blanket to fill in the space under my knees. And sometimes I like to have a pillow or something under my head, but for tonight I'm just gonna kind of hunker down on the mat. But you should suit yourself. So, welcome. Yin yoga, if you have not, for whatever reason, seen one of these videos before, it's very slow, kind of cooling practice is the notion anyway. So we're gonna do some poses and we'll hang out for a while. So if it feels like your body is tensing up or tightening or resisting or gripping against the pose, that's what the props are for. So you might want a couple of pillows or some towels or a blanket or some more traditional, if that's the right word, modernly traditional yoga props. They're pretty new on the scene, comparatively speaking. Yeah, some yoga blocks or some things like that would work as well. And then I just kind of start the pose somewhere. Feel how that's impacting my back, my hips, in this case the inner thigh. And I just get the props sort of settled in. The arms could be in different positions based on what you're doing. I kind of think I'm gonna go for a wider position with my arms. That's feeling kind of nice tonight. If it changes, I'll change my arm position with it. And then you just get quiet, let the body relax as best you can. Breathe, nice, deep, smooth breaths. Often for me, like after a couple of moments, there's a point where the pose just kind of lets go a little bit. And I just hit that moment. There's just a little like deepening of the sense of relaxation. So sometimes for me, like 2 or 3 minutes is required for that sense to come up. Just notice if you feel any of those kinds of little, I don't know what the right word for it is, transitions or I don't know if evolution is the right word. That implies things I'm not sure if I want to include, but just a kind of shifting maybe is the right way to think about it of the pose itself. So we'll stay for about 2 more minutes. If it's not comfortable to stay that long, you can come out of the pose anytime between now and then and just hang out on your back. just going to take about 3 deeper breaths right here. It's kind of intentionally expanding my abdomen as big as it's willing to go. And this last one, as I exhale, I'm just going to straighten out my legs. And then sometimes it feels really good to me to just pause after a yoga pose that I've held for a while. It doesn't occur as often with flowy practices. The transitions are a lot smoother, but these kind of long static poses, sometimes I like to just be still in a slightly different shape for a few breaths, and then it feels nice to move. Sometimes it feels nice to move right away. So just sort of let your intuition guide you on that for your own body. I find if my spine is involved in like a twist or a back bend or side bend, that it's more likely that I'll need a little bit of still time for my spine to adjust before the movement. Now, we're gonna do a variation on the twist called cat pulls its tail. And what you do for that is hold onto your foot with one hand. Now, if that's easy for you to do, then you'll be fine. For me, because I have a little bit shorter arms and longer thigh bones, and just kind of, my quads are way more tight than almost any other part of my body. Holding onto my foot puts a lot of pressure in my knee, and it's not comfortable. So I use a strap, so it just extends the length of my arm, and I'm actually gonna use this really long strap with a loop, and then I can pull the strap over the top of my shoulder and hold on to the strap anywhere. I like this more than holding onto my foot. It lets my hand relax. So if you find like your hand cramping up or your knee isn't happy, try using something like a strap. If you don't have a yoga strap, you can use a towel or something like that. You just have to hold on to both ends. Okay, so I put the strap around the top of my right foot. My left leg is gonna come over the stack. Now, one option is to lay on your side and then you bring that right foot back and hold on to it. The second option is to, instead of laying on the side, once you've got hold of the foot, and you kind of hold your thigh back, you roll the shoulder back down so it's more of a twist. So it's up to you how you want to function that way. Everybody's body is a little bit different and how accommodating it is with the cat pulls its tail. So you can kind of feel it out. You might even find it's more comfortable if you sort of prop yourself up on your elbow on your side, so you can do a little bit more of an elevated pose as well. So I have this foot kind of settled so that it will help sort of hold my thigh in position. I'm aiming for kind of a sensation down the top of my right thigh. It doesn't have to be big, it's not a big sensation, but I definitely feel it. And because the strap is over my shoulder, I can hold on with this hand, and if that hand gets tired, I can hold on with this one. This gives me a little bit more opportunity to not be in a position that feels crummy. So we'll stay for a couple more minutes here. I think I'm gonna let my leg relax a little bit and put a pillow in there instead. Oh yeah, that's nice. So you kind of make it your own pose. Just be mindful of all of the places where there's a little bit of pressure. Make sure your body is okay with the pressure points. stay for about another minute or so. Take about 3 more breaths. All right, so this leg that's over the top, that guy is going to go back. But before I do that, I'm going to let go of the strap, or in your case, you might want to let go of your foot, and let that bottom leg straighten all the way out. And then when I roll back onto my back, it's fairly easy going to do that. Sometimes I find if I keep trying to hold onto my foot and unwind, that it gets a little torquey or a little funky with the knee. So if you have a better way to get out of that pose, use your way. But that one is pretty good for me. Now, again, I kind of took a second to relax, and now I'm gonna move back and forth a little bit. And what I'm kind of looking for, when I go this way, there's a little more resistance than when I take my legs that direction. That's the way that I was kind of twisting before. So when it feels like that evens out a little bit more, is when I know it's a pretty good time to do the other side. So I had the strap on my right foot last time. I'm going to put it on my left foot this time. Okay. And then I'm going to take the right leg over the top. Bring in my thigh backwards. Now for me, having a little bit more room between my foot and my buttock is better. And then for some people, having a little bit more like the foot pressed up against the back of the hip or the buttock is better. So I like room, and then I move my thigh backwards, almost more like a lunge. And then other people will want their foot closer to their buttock so that it's a little more like a hero pose or something along that line. So you can see what you like best. On this side, for me, the twist is a little tighter. It can't get quite as far over, so I have to build a little a little support structure for my leg on the right side, the right leg. I'll just pause here for a couple minutes. gonna take 3 more breaths here. Straighten out the leg with the bend in it. Bottom one. I could not articulate what was going on there. Oh. And then come on back to the center. Oh my goodness. Okay. Now, what's going to happen eventually is we're just going to flip over onto the belly and do some Sphinx. But I'm not quite ready yet. So I'm gonna hang out here for a second, do some movement, and then, so you might wanna do some other kinds of movement, like maybe some cat-cows on your hands and knees, or some downward dog, or something like that. So anything that seems like a really good idea, you could add that in first. A little child's pose, whatever jam is right for you. Oh. All right. Ooh. And when you're ready, you come to a Sphinx. And sometimes, like if the hip bones feel really sharp against the floor, a blanket under the hips feels nice. I like the legs to be relaxed. So I try to sort of soften a little bit with my legs, but if your low back is really grouchy, sometimes it feels nicer to sort of be a little more active and press the legs down. The other possibility is that it would just be nicer to lower down a little bit. So you can come into a crocodile. You could put a prop underneath you, like a pillow or something, and then crocodile would be just a little higher, so somewhere between the crocodile and the Sphinx. And similarly, you could come up to a higher back bend or make your Sphinx a little higher. And then that gets you kind of a little closer to the seal pose. So based on the feedback that you get from your low back, those are all some possibilities. So we'll hang out here for a couple of minutes. My goal is to try to just melt the front of my hip as much as I can into the floor. If goal is the right word for that, that's letting go of all activity. Is that a goal? Could be. Letting go in goals feels a little bit like an oxymoron, but you know. I'm gonna do a little shoulder opener, and this is kind of targets more the front of the shoulder. So in a moment, but not quite yet. We're gonna stick an arm out to the side and basically sort of roll towards it. So for me, I need to have some kind of support for my head. So I'm gonna use, I'll use this blanket. So I'm just gonna have that handy. But if you need to get a pillow or something like that, do that, so you'll have something that will support your head. So we'll take another breath here. And then we're gonna kind of lose the background, the back bend, and take one arm and stick it out to the side. Now, I'm gonna do my right arm first, but I like the placement of my hand to be more in line with my waist than my shoulder. If I put my hand way up here by my shoulder, I can feel the resistance around my collarbone and my arm bone. So try your arm directly across from the shoulder. See what's there, and then just kind of incrementally lower the arm until you feel your shoulder blade move back into your back really easily. And then that's going to be the place that's going to give you the best results for your arm, okay? So then we're going to take this opposite leg. So my right arm, I'm going to roll towards that one. So I'm going to take my left leg over the top. And then putting the little pillow under my head, I lift up and adjust my arm bone. So I'm trying to slide my shoulder blade in as much as I can in neutral position. And then I kind of, as I lower back down, I can feel a stretch across the front of my shoulder, a little bit of chest, a little bit of the top and like bicep area of my arm. You can leave that leg in the air. I'm gonna stick a pillow right there between my knees, just so it fills in the gap. So I can kind of stretch that leg out and let it hang, and then that kind of pulls and holds me in place pretty nicely. Now you can use your spare arm like behind your back if you like. I use mine as like a little kickstand because this right side, my body doesn't want to roll as far back. So it lets me kind of lean a little forward so I can find the just right amount of pressure. I have seen people whose shoulders are so mobile that they can lay on their back with their arm underneath them. But it's really rare. So for most of us, some kind of forward leaning is going to probably be the case. So allow whatever is appropriate for your shoulder joint. I'm going to stay like this for about another minute or a minute and a half or so. If you get any numbness or tingling in your fingers, there's a series of nerves that goes from the neck through kind of where the collarbone, the shoulder blade, and the arm bone all kind of meet. So you'll want to take some pressure away from that. And you can do that either by rolling forward a little bit or repositioning your arm a little lower usually. But for some people, a little higher is better. Just any numbness or tingly kind of pins and needles feelings in your fingers, reposition your arm. We're almost there. We're almost done with the pose. How's that? Let me clarify what there is. Sometimes I catch myself saying silly things to y'all. So we're going to take 2 more breaths. And then we're going to come out. Now to come out, I'm just going to roll back where I came from onto the belly. And then let that shoulder have just a little kind of gentle movement. And again, you can wait for a second and just have that shoulder hang out, or you can move right away. Now, when I come out of the pose, if I've done the pose with pretty good alignment, my shoulder feels lighter, it feels a little bit softer, like the movement feels really nice. But if I've been in a position where my arm is kind of pinching or it's not in the right position, when I come out, my arm will feel kind of heavy and a little bit painful. So we're going for the lighter end of the spectrum, not the painful end. So again, when we do the second side, just be mindful about, don't be afraid to reposition your arm. You can even bend at the elbow as you need to make this work out, okay? So I'm gonna stick my arm out, start by getting into place. And then, fine. This side is a little easier for me to find the snuggle in spot.
because there's not as much resistance in my upper back on the left side. Stay for about another minute and a half or so. Right, so we're going to take 2 more breaths. And we'll just come on out of there. And when you're ready, you can move your shoulder a little bit. Now I'm going to do just a few moments of child's pose, just a few breaths there. But again, you can do some cat shapes, or you could do some downward dog, or some, whatever feels like an appropriate thing to do. We're going to go from whatever we're doing, whatever choice you make, into a swan pose. So I'm just going to give myself a little child's pose moment to kind of wiggle out my low back. Oh. Okay. So I'm going to start with my right leg. I'm going to bring that guy up front. Now, a swan pose, and you might want to call it the pigeon pose. I don't care. A swan by any other name. If I had my preference, we would call all of it swan pose because it's a nicer, it just feels more elegant. So the leg can be all the way straight out with yin, or you can, if you want to, kind of hybridize it with a kind of a deer shape and bend at that knee. The most important part is that there's no pain in your knee, your hip, your low back that feels like it's really grouchy. We want the hips and the low back and everybody to be happy with us today. So choose appropriately for you. I'm going to go with slightly bent, but I want to get kind of a balance between a little bit of length on the front of this hip and this nice sensation in my buttock. So I'm going to go for that. I'm not sure why I said the word buttock like Forrest Gump, but there you have it. Okay. I also kind of like the back bend option, so I'm kind of propping myself up, and then in a while I might change my mind about that. We'll stay with this pose for about 4 minutes. If it feels like your foot needs to come closer to your hip, don't be afraid to do that. For me, it's better for my knee to have that wider space, but for you it might be nicer to tuck that heel in a little closer to the thigh. Halfway, I'm just going to make a minor shift and bring that back leg just a little bit into a deer shape. So we've got 1 minute left. We're just shy of that. 2 more breaths. Now, for me, the best way to get out of this is to lean into this front leg hip and then bring the back leg around to the front. So that's what I'm gonna do. Now, you can just sit cross-legged, or you can bring your knees more over top of each other, or you can put one shin on top of the other, which is what I'm gonna do. And we're gonna do a little twist. So I'm twisting towards this leg that came up on top, so I'm twisting to my left. I'm just gonna fill in that space. Turn left, and some people might want their knee up so they can kind of hold onto it, and that's fine, you can do that. For me, it feels a little better to twist with both my hips more even and on the ground. And if I go for that sort of a shape, it makes one hip lift a little higher. So if one of your hips is a little higher than the other, let that hip, the higher one, move kind of backwards into the twist with you, or forwards, depending on which way you're turned. Just let it go with you into the twist, the direction that your spine is moving. It'll feel better in your low back. And if what I said is not true, listen to your low back and not to me. If there's any really uncomfortable sensations in your lowest part of your back and right on the back of the pelvis, definitely listen to those and back off a little bit. So we'll stay here for about 2 more minutes. Turn my head the other way for the last little bit here. But I'm still keeping my torso toward the original direction. It's fun to kind of watch how your torso sometimes wants to move with your head. So that all by itself is kind of interesting. We'll do 2 more breaths here. Out of the twist, lean back a little bit, unwind the legs, and just for a moment, I'm just gonna pause. So I had my right leg as the forward leg for the swan last time. I'm gonna put my left leg in the forward position. This time, I'm not quite ready to go yet. I still feel like I'm twisting. So I'm just kind of setting up my props. And then when I feel that sort of inclination to still twist that way, release, then I'm gonna slide into my swan. So you can do that whenever you're ready. Built this huge mountain of props so that I can do this without like propping up on my hands, which would be the normal way that I would do that. It gives me same amount of back bend, but a little bit lazier. Which, as far as I'm concerned, is the name of the yin game. Like, how soft and relaxed can I be? But I am still getting that really nice kind of
front of the hip flexor area stretch. And the buttock over here, it's really the external hip rotator area, but it's up under the glute, so you'll feel it in that region. And we'll stay for a bit, about 3 more minutes. Gonna just, for my halfway mark, just kind of bend that back leg just a little bit. It just shifts the pressure a little bit. I find it interesting, but if you like it better with your legs straight, don't hesitate to stay put. We've got just about 30 more seconds or so here. Take a nice big breath. And then again, I'm going to kind of lean into this bent leg hip so I can bring my back leg around. That one's going up on top. So last time I turned to my left, so this time I'm turning to the right.
we're gonna stay for another minute or so. So I'm going to take about 3 more breaths here. Once you're ready, you can just unwind your twist. Avoiding my plants, I'm gonna unwind my pose. Alright, so we've done a pretty back bend heavy practice. So we're gonna end with one more pose of forward bend. I'm gonna do a wide V forward bend, but you could do one with your legs closer together. And if you have another pose you would rather do, like maybe you want to end with an inversion instead, you could certainly do that. Now it's comfortable for me to let my back round a little bit. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do this shape, is because that shape feels good in my back. But if for you, the back, just rounding the back is really tricky, especially in the like kind of lumbar area between your ribs and the top of your hip, then you may want to keep your spine a little more neutral. You just kind of prop yourself up a little higher so that when you lean forward with the pelvis, you just keep the spine going in that same sort of neutral position, instead of letting it round like a little turtle shell. Herniated discs or bulging discs in the lower back are really common, and often that rounded back shape can exacerbate that. Stay with this pose for another minute or so. Okay, so we're gonna take a nice big breath. And I'm gonna hold that air in and unroll my spine and then come on back up. And then I am going to go directly onto my back, where I'm gonna do a little happy baby pose, or some equivalent. So, since, this will feel a little bit like the back bend, or like the forward bend anyway, the forward bend. And kind of use this pose to unwind. So you can hold on to the thighs or the shins or the feet. We want the back of the hips right there, that sacrum area, to lay on the ground. And then we're just gonna give that a little, you can rock or you can just hold it. Just pause briefly. For me, I can kind of feel where my back sort of becomes a little more accustomed to its neutral shape. So I'm gonna bring the pillow in, stretch each leg out over top of the pillow. Oh. Settle in. One of the possibilities with yin is to kind of end with what's called Starfish Pose, Pentacle Pose, where you kind of stretch out like a big 5-pointed starfish, your head being one of the points. And sometimes that feels really nice, or you could do a more traditional shavasana with your arms and legs in a more neutral position. I'm going for the bigger shape tonight. And then the hope is that this pose is mostly intensity free, so it's a very relaxed and comfortable pose. take a moment just to notice your breath. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Stretch them apart. Give them another wiggle. Do the wrist and ankles. Sometimes it feels nice to lay on your side for a little bit, so you can do that if that seems like a plan. And then when you're ready, come to a seated position. So, thanks for joining me for some yin. Let's take a nice big breath. And a sigh. Namaste. Welcome to the rest of your night.